All right. If the audio is working on the YouTube, let go live. Don't. There we go. Okay, we got Marler in here. Look at that. And we're live on the YouTube. This is seems to be working. So as we wait for folks to come in, I know John Tweets is coming in here shortly. Marler is there. Are you in Los Angeles, Marler? Can you hear me? There we go. All right. Just checking to make sure you guys can hear me. And let me see here. All right. Somebody's coming in. We are 24 hours away, boys and girls, women and men, dogs and cats. I hope you guys can hear me. And hope you guys want to talk about Dogs and Frogs National Championship defense as Georgia fans have been descending on the city of Los Angeles, getting ready to party, getting ready to call the dogs, getting ready to bark at people. I'm excited, but I will not be watching the game at the stadium at SoFi. I will be at home. And I'm pretty excited because for the first time in I can remember in a very long time, they canceled my work tomorrow. No filming for me, so I can get ready for the game and watch it and not have to worry about rushing home through traffic and get it. So we've got some chat coming in. I love this because that means we're live on YouTube. I hope you guys can hear me. Got some Go Dogs. Got Jeff Midoff. Got 3716 dogs. And it's a 41-27. Looks like we're gonna get some overs here. And any rate, I want to share this great tweet. So if you guys didn't see this, or you can go watch it on YouTube. This was on the Georgia Facebook site. We have from Delta Flight 8787. We have depleted our supply of alcohol on this flight. That is one of the Delta flights heading into Los Angeles, and my that was retweeted by Sicko's Committee and tagged Tempe and Georgia's Verb, some of my favorite followers. So clearly, Georgia is ready to party. I'm very curious if anybody's on the ground there that wants to jump in and talk and tell me about what we are, how many, what's the ratio of purple and red and all that sort of stuff. We're going to go through the closing lines. We're going to take some prop bets. We do have to talk about a haircut and some other things. Hopefully, John Tweets will get on here and give us an update. He is credentialed and covering it for Dog Central and his Dog Dispatch, and was at media days and has gotten a chance to ask questions and be a part of the press conferences. Also, of course, Graham Coffey, co-founder of Dog Central, will hopefully join us tonight and will give us some updates on the ground. With that, I'm going to kick off with the line move. Last night, the line moved on Circus Sports from 12.5 to 13, which is not much, but it is a key number to get off that 12.5. And also, it's interesting that the line is inching towards Georgia as opposed to the Peach Bowl, where it crashed against Georgia. That line moved a full 2 points from Friday to Saturday at kickoff. So clearly that number is not being hammered by the pros. So I kind of like that as a Georgia fan because definitely the pros were on the right side against Ohio State. And so that line closed at 12.5. And obviously that game was almost a loss for the Dogs, and Ohio State easily covered that game. And if anybody else has some thoughts on that line, jump in. I think Kelly Ford, I was fortunate enough to join him on his podcast this week, and he is a true analytics expert. I'm an analytics reporter, is how I feel about it. And he has Kelly. You want to talk? Because I would love to hear about what your numbers say and what maybe your score prediction. I know that you probably put it out on the podcast, and it escapes me. I'm sure you published it many times, but if you wanted to come in and share some stats and numbers that you've got, Kelly, thank you for taking my invite, and just tell us what you like to tell us what your numbers are saying about the game tomorrow, and have they? And do you do any updates at this point? There's nothing really to update, right? You're not doing a player level thing that would be affected by the running back playing or not for Texas Christian.
Yeah, no, thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. And thanks again for hopping on the We Hate Your Team podcast this week. That was a really fun conversation we had, you, me, Zach, and Parker, Stats of War. So hopefully folks had a chance to check that out. But like I said on the podcast, I like Georgia in this game. I like Georgia really across the board. I think Georgia has the advantage on both sides of the ball. I think the higher quality matchup here, looking at my numbers, is the TCU offense versus the Georgia defense. Those are two really top 5, top 10 units and have been for most of the year. In terms of updates, I updated my numbers after the conclusion of all the other bowls. So I really temper the movement that teams can have in their team ratings. You know, playoff games, sure, and New Year's Six games to some extent, but outside of that, all the other bowl games have so many various factors that are at play that are not at play during the regular season. So I kind of take bowl results with a grain of salt. Of course, TCU's and Georgia's updates get full credit. Those are full out games that everybody's going and everybody's playing for everything. So no, I'm not going to make an adjustment if Kendre Miller's end up playing or not. My numbers like Georgia in this game by 12.5. So I heard you say the number shifted to 13 now. I think it's right around the right place. I have an 81% chance for Georgia to win this game outright. So if I'm a Georgia fan, I'm definitely feeling good. But at the same time, TCU's they've been a thorn in the analytics side, and they've been a thorn in their opponent's side all year. So I'm not counting them out. I'm giving them a 1 in 5 chance to win. How about that?
I'll take 1 in 5. But also, it's curious because that game, everyone's saying, oh, they were favored and they were underdogs in the Michigan game, but that game was all over the map, and I don't know how much you can really take from a game where there's 2 pick sixes and that many turnovers at such critical points in the field for Michigan. Do you do a post game analysis and win? I mean, I didn't see the win probability on CFP data or something but it had to be close to a 50-50 game, I would imagine.
Yeah, and that's I'm working on getting my post-game win expectancies. I love Bill Connolly's. I love CFP data's. I'm working on getting mine into a shareable form. I'm just not quite there yet with what I'm comfortable sharing. But I saw it. TCU did, by my numbers, just barely, quote, deserve to win that game. Like they made just enough plays, had just enough of the toss these factors into the air, and this how many times this team would win out of 10. They did just enough to come out on the rightful side of that result. But it could have gone either way. That game flipped, like you said, so many different times. I was on the edge of my seat as a neutral fan in that game, just absolutely loving it. It was incredible. But TCU, yes, they were underdogs. Yes, they've been underdogs multiple times this year by my numbers and by Vegas and found a way to win. Georgia is going to be the best team that TCU has played all year, and that includes Michigan, and that includes Kansas State, who they played twice, and Texas, who's the analytics darling this year, including by my numbers. Georgia is the number 1 team in the country by my power ratings, by Vegas's power ratings, I'm sure, and by all the polls. So this will be their stiffest test. It's at a true neutral site, but I'm sure I don't know what it's going to look like in terms of the breakdown of fans there. I'm assuming it's probably going to be close to 50-50. TCU fans, that's got to be a hot ticket. Georgia fans, I would think it'll still be a hot ticket, but having just won it last year, I mean, who knows if they'll make the trip all the way out to SoFi. But yes, this will be TCU's stiffest test for sure.
Kelly, so I was trying to find a comp for this team for Georgia that they've played this year. I mean, I don't think there's something similar. I don't think style-wise, but just athleticism, points, production, efficiency. I just threw out there that are they as good as LSU? Are they better than LSU? And is Florida are they as good as Tennessee? I mean, where do you have them as a comp that Georgia's played this year?
Yeah, so right now, and I'm pulling up my my updated ratings, power ratings. Right now, I have TCU power rated number 9. So if you're looking at a comp in terms of who's around there in the overall power rating, not style of play, but overall power rating, I have right now Tennessee's power rated number 4. So I would say Tennessee was a more difficult opponent for Georgia. Now I know that one was at Georgia. LSU's number 10 in the power rating, so they are right behind TCU, and that was a neutral site in Atlanta. If we can call a neutral site in Atlanta, or Atlanta neutral site for Georgia, technically it was. So I think that's probably in terms of team quality the closest comp, and we saw what Georgia did to LSU in that SEC championship game. I'm not suggesting it's going to happen again that way, but like I said, my numbers like Georgia by 12.5, and I would say that yes, LSU is that next comp. Oregon, number 14 in my power ratings. I know that was a long time ago. Oregon's changed quite a bit over the course of the year, but that's another team that's pretty close to a comp there in my power rating set as it stands.
Oh, that's great. I mean, so you kind of have to throw some of this out. I mean, clearly this is the most resilient team that we've seen in I believe in the college football era, right? College football playoff era. I just don't know of anyone that's come from behind and done this much. I mean, I guess Georgia in 2017, I think was 6th or something like that. I think they were one of the higher rising teams to make the playoff and make a championship game. But I don't know. That doesn't even seem like a fair comp for what TCU has done this year.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. TCU, just from a preseason odds perspective, from a game by game odds, like we said, they've been underdogs so many times by my numbers and by Vegas. TCU would absolutely be the most unheralded, I don't know if that's the right word, national champion that we've had in the CFP era. And I'm trying to think, Josh, on the fly, going back to the BCS era even. I mean, I'm not sure if there's a bigger underdog story. Maybe Ohio State tip my tongue, maybe them in 2002. Not a whole lot expected coming into the year, but I still think their odds probably would have been shorter than TCU's coming into this year. So absolutely, I'd agree with that.
All right, I'm with John from John Tweet Sports on Twitter has joined us. He's in Los Angeles. We can see the palm trees in the background. He's been at Media Days. Give us. I know you've been tweeting and writing stuff on the site.
Yeah.
But just tell us what it's like in LA, dude.
Yeah, man. We're having a great time out here. It's been. I'm sitting in the beautiful hotel lobby of the Marriott. So if you hear music in the background, they've got it. This Marriott is bumping right now. But no, it's been an absolute great weekend so far. Georgia got here on Friday. We were able to see those guys yesterday for Media Day, head coach's press conference today. I have seen a lot of Georgia fans. I think Georgia fans arrived early. But I'll tell you, this morning, we've been this afternoon, we've been walking around LA out here, and there's a lot of purple. I think TCU is going to show up. So it's been a really good weekend. The teams seem ready to play. I think TCU seems really loose. I think Georgia seems really loose. It's been really fun seeing it all up close for sure.
So I've got our good friend Trigger Trey with the picture. I'm sure everyone was all over Twitter, but it's just the fade that seems to be making the news all over the place. So
I have not confirmed an actual fade. I think we're assuming a fade. I'm hoping a fade. We're trying to confirm the actual fade. That's the big news story we're trying to confirm right now. Does Stetson Bennett actually have a fade, or did he just get a nice haircut?
There's no way he goes in there to the barber, gets a haircut, posts a picture from the dog's account, and it's not a fade.
It's not a fade, right? It's got to be a fade.
Yeah. It's got to be a fade. Trigger Trey said it's dogs by 90 with the fade. He also I'm not sure if he's promised Hellcats and free oil changes for life, but
he has. Listen, Trey
you should be following Trigger Trey.
Yeah, he promised Hellcats last year if Georgia won a natty to all Georgia fans, free Hellcats. But then he said inventory was low. I think supply chain. I think there were challenges last year. This year, I think Trigger Trey is going to come through with the free Hellcats for Georgia fans if they win the natty.
Let me see here. I got a question here too from on the YouTube. Who do you think will play on the ends for the defensive line. Seems like Michael is hurting. Chambliss and Beal, Marvin Jones Jr., Jelon Walker, more snaps. Do you have any thoughts on this question from Boise Dog, another dog out west, it sounds like?
Yeah, I think you're gonna see some guys play at 70-80%, right? It's the national championship game. You're gonna see guys have to gut it out. I do think on the edge you're gonna see Jelon Walker probably play a little bit. Marvin Jones Jr. I think you may see play a little bit. But I think Georgia's going to try to go out there with Robert Beal, Michael Williams, and Chaz Chambliss and give it a go. I think the challenge this game is Max Duggan and trying to keep him contained. He obviously uses legs a lot, and there's depth challenges at that edge position, but. I think they'll probably make up for a little bit of that injury, by my personal opinion, by sending Javon Bullard off the edge like they did against Tennessee and a little bit against Ohio State last week. But I think you're going to see some guys gut it out. I think that's what happens at this game. It's the last one of the year.
That's awesome. I mean, we're very lucky to have the depth and the quality of depth, especially on that D line. And all over the field, and yeah, it's our 15th game, so no one's 100%. I wouldn't think, but and they've got some studs there ready to play. I mean, we talked about it. It's been talked about ad nauseum about how many players Georgia had to replace this year, but how many? But also last year, a lot of these guys got snaps last year, and even the younger players are really just becoming starters this year. I mean, they've played a full year plus already. So I do expect the defense to kind of show out. I do. I think Georgia's going to get after him and be able to control up front and allow the secondary to hide some things and also give some protections over there. And we don't have as many NFL wide receivers running down the field as we've had to face against the Buckeyes. What have you done today? What was today's schedule?
Yes.
Can you tell us who you spoke to, who you heard from, and what you got to hear today?
Yeah, today was the coaches' press conference this morning. So you know how those things go. You probably saw it on ESPN. Thought it was a good scene. We actually have spent the rest of the day since the press conference, honestly, trying to figure out what we can learn about things like depth. The team is over in SoFi right now. There wasn't media availability for the practice today. Yesterday, the media got to go over there to practice, and Kirby Smart did a good yoga session again. So that was pretty awesome. A lot of the media members got a nice shuttle ride over to SoFi to watch a yoga session again for about 12 minutes, I think, or something. So, today, we were able to actually get out and see a little bit of LA, meet up with some other Georgia folks, Georgia fans. It's been a really good scene, but I think the press conference, it's interesting. Listen to Sonny Dykes and Kirby Smart. I love these two coaches. I think these are two. Sonny Dykes is just. I didn't know much about him. I knew, obviously he was at SMU, but I didn't have I didn't know a lot about his personality. But seeing him just talk about things like the transfer portal, NIL, how he feels like these changes are actually good for college football, and just seeing kind of his personality come out was really probably one of the most fun things of the weekend for me.
Yeah, a lot of guys say that he's just a great dude, great football guy, and just somebody that's super charming, and everyone's glad to see him succeed. Of course, Georgia has become the sort of the TCU is definitely America's team this time around. I think Georgia had a sympathetic fan base outside of the true Georgia fans, but not the case this year. I think you can see that. We were talking about the line earlier. You can see a lot of money taking the underdog there, hoping to see also a blue blood, if we're allowed to call Georgia a blue blood now, take a loss. So
I don't think we're allowed to do that, but we'll do it anyway. Listen, I will say one thing. The locals out here, the LA locals, have been big Georgia fans this weekend. And most of them I've heard they are Georgia fans because they have put money on Georgia to win. So I know that Georgia is it feels definitely like the Death Star going up against TCU, but I will say there's a large contingent of LA residents who seem to have put a wager on the Dogs. So.
Well, I kicked off the little space tonight with the line is creeping away from TCU and towards Georgia. So if you wanted to get Georgia at 12.5, I think that number is going to be, you're going to have to juice that to get it. So I am curious if it goes the next half point. I predicted last night at dinner with some friends that I thought it would go to 13.5. I just felt like, all the analytics guys I listened to, Bud Elliott, Rufus Peabody had this number, somewhere between 14, and Rufus had a minus 18 number there. Even with priors, it was like 14.5. So, so I do think the chance to bet on Georgia, you're going to have to lay some more points. Again, can you see the questions on YouTube, John? Because
I can. Yeah, I can see
cool. Thank you. Oh, look at that, Kelly. Thank you, Kelly. Sean Moore, will Kendall Milton get more opportunities tomorrow? People seem to think he will be given the success zone blocking. Well, he will have success given the success zone blocking he has versus the 3-3-5. So 3-3-5 is the three numbers we've heard a lot about this week. So at any rate, thank you, Kelly, for Kelly Ford. Please follow him on Twitter at K4 Ratings and his podcast, We Hate Your Team. Lots of fun, excellent data there, and he was kind enough to share. But I think he's going to jump off here. But I appreciate you, Kelly, for jumping in there. Kendall Milton and the 3-3-5. You got any thoughts on that one, John?
Yeah, I mean the 3-3-5. One of the things is hard. Georgia runs a lot of counter, and that's hard to run. It's hard to run counter against the 3-3-5 because counter is really predicated against with guys getting upfield and you being able to block and create that scheme for those counter runs. Kendall does a fantastic job running the zone scheme, and my personal opinion is I think Kendall Milton is gonna carry the ball a lot against TCU tomorrow. I think one of the things that Georgia, this 3-3-5, one of the things that it's built on is strong physical defensive backs, and the way there's a few ways to beat it. One of the ways that you beat it is speed. I think you saw that with Georgia in the second half of against Mississippi State, when Mississippi State runs a 3-3-5 as well too. So I think you're going to see a lot of Kendall Milton running the ball to really try to open up some of these more vertical, kind of speed routes with guys like Arian Smith, A.D. Mitchell, Lad McConkey, et cetera. Assuming Lad is able to run full speed out there.
I expect to. I think they're going to run the ball a lot. I think it'll be a little bit more of a Georgia offense and more balance than we've seen in the last few games. I do think they're going to have success attacking the front there for TCU, and I think both Kenny Mack and Kendall will get a lot of carries. Kendall, if he's healthy, which he seems like he has. I mean, he's averaging 7 yards a carry. I mean, obviously he's been limited for most of the year, but man, he seems to be running really well. I know that us in the Dog Central chat have noticed that. We've seen pictures and pads low and what you want to see out of a healthy, hard running back. So I think he could be a problem for the Horned Frogs come tomorrow night.
Yeah. We got Marler in here. What does Marler have to say?
I don't know. Marler was my first one in here. He might be just listening or doing something else. So,
all right.
But
all right.
I've invited him to speak. But
I joined late. All right, I joined late. Okay.
Yeah, but he'll probably wait for maybe the prop bets or something coming in, which we do have some prop bets that we basically just show what they are and talk about them. Gambling is technically illegal in the state of Georgia. And I believe it's illegal in the state of California still. They didn't pass the Prop 47 or whatever that was. That didn't happen last year. So at any rate, and also maybe we can get Graham in here. I know you guys have been running around like crazy. Please check out Dog Central. They've been dropping stories in the forum and blog posts all weekend long. And Graham has been putting videos out from the interviews. He had a great one with Shu and Muschamp that was either yesterday or today. So check that out. And also we if you got any questions in the space, we're following you guys on the YouTube chat. And if nobody else wants to chat, I'll throw up some prop bets here, and let's just see if we got any thoughts on that.
Let's go for it.
All right. Rushing yards. Okay. Dejon Edwards. Let me see here. Let me go full screen. Edwards has over under 49.5 yards. Kenny Mack over under 64.5. Bennett at 12.5, and Duggan at 28.5. Pretty interesting there. That tempting is that Bennett is tempting, very tempting at 12.5 yards. And Duggan at 28.5. I'm going to take the under on Duggan. I think we'll put a spy on him, and I think I'm assuming I don't count sack yards against rushing, but the sack yards. I mean, we've heard all week long we don't get sacks, so maybe it doesn't matter. But
prop bets sack yardage does count against rushing, so that's a key note there.
I'm going to take under the Kenny McIntosh. I think just because we kind of talk about Milton, I think Kenny McIntosh is going to be used more of a passing threat, and I'm sure he's going to get some carries, but the ball handed off to him. But I kind of like the under in that. Dejon Edwards, he'd have to get a lot of carries because I feel like he's going to be that bowling ball, getting the short yardage plays. That's a big number for, I think, Dejon Edwards. And so I think I'm probably the only one I think I really want on this is under Duggan and over Bennett.
Yeah, I'll ride with that. I think I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't know about Max Duggan. I feel like I would take the under there, but I also feel like maybe I wouldn't place a wager on that at all. But Stetson Bennett, I would definitely take the over. Would definitely take the over on Stetson Bennett's 12.5 rushing yards. I think he's gonna break a couple of runs off. Because with this 3-3-5, I do feel like we're going to be in a situation where it's going to open up an opportunity for him to take off a little bit.
Moving over to the receptions, Quentin Johnson is interesting there at 4.5. I feel like they're going to feed him. And I think for them to have a chance, I think he's got to go over that. I think he's got at least 5 catches. Mitchell with 3.5. Barber for TCU 2.5. McConkey 3.5. Davis 2.5. Kenny McIntosh 3.5. I think I like the over there. I think the over. I like Quentin Johnson to go over there and Kenny Mack on the over there. What do you think on any of those or any of those other guys in there? What do you Mitchell at 3.5 there? That seems like a tempting number too.
Yeah, for me, I would take A.D. Mitchell and Quentin Johnson would be the two I would play here. I think Kenny McIntosh, he had 4 receptions versus Ohio State, but that's the only game of the. Well, I guess he's had it early in the season, but that's the only in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games that he's had over 4 receptions. But Quentin Johnson, I think they're definitely going to target him. I think it's also my personal opinion is we're going to get in a situation where Georgia has a little bit of a lead, maybe not a huge lead, but Georgia has a little bit of a lead, and it's going to force TCU to start trying to air it out a little bit. So yeah, I would take Quentin Johnson and A.D. Mitchell would be the two I would go here. Ladd McConkey, if you're looking for an under, that's where I would go. I think Ladd is going to be under that 3.5.
Just trying to pull up. We had a question about the TCU's O-line matchup. I'm going to throw this on the screen while we take a little break from the props because I think it's a good question. Walter Ham asked, how does TCU's O-line match up with our defensive line? I think that the offensive line for TCU is probably a point of weakness. It's not bad offensive line. They've got 4 guys that have 900 snaps, so clearly they've been healthy all year long, but they've got a right guard that has been probably their weak link. And I think that I don't have his name up because I've got too many screens going on, but if anybody is out there that knows that right guard, or I don't think we have any TCU folks in the chat, but I would love to, if you do, please raise your hand. We'll get you in here. But I do think that is a very favorable matchup.
I think it's
for Georgia.
Yeah, I think it's Wes Harris, right? Is that the right?
Yeah, that's it. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I would agree. I think what I will say is I do think this is TCU. It's an interesting offensive line because I think TCU's offensive line is actually more physical than Ohio State's, but I don't think they're as good. So it's a interesting dynamic. Like I do think that there are times when what I mean by that is I think there are times when you have guys coming off the edge or you have guys trying to, bull rush or run some of these exotic stunts that TCU is a little more physical in terms of just knocking the defensive line, off of their route when they're running, kind of some of these stunts. But they generally don't work as well together as some of the offensive lines that Georgia has played this year. I think the first half against Michigan was probably the best that they had played, and they still didn't do very much on offense. They had, a pick six on defense and scored a few points there. But I think TCU's offensive line, I agree. I think it's the defensive line for Georgia. It's going to be interesting how Georgia plays it, right? I mean, I think if Georgia, you have a quarterback who has proven that he can take off and run. You have a quarterback that has proven that he can kind of put a team on his shoulders and just make stuff happen. So if Georgia tries with the defensive line to lay back a little bit and play a little bit more conservative in terms of, just trying to not doing a lot of exotic blitzing, trying to contain Max Duggan and run with the receivers on the back end, then I think TCU's offensive line will potentially have some success. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think Georgia's going to send the house on Max Duggan a little bit, and I think their offensive line will definitely get out of sorts when that kind of thing starts happening.
Yeah, Wes, this offensive line has allowed 99 pressures, which is half of what Georgia's offensive line has allowed. Corker, their best offensive lineman, has allowed 26 pressures. That Harris kid that we were just talking about has allowed he's got a PFF grade of 60.1, has allowed 12 pressures and 600 snaps. He's the guy that has not played as much as the other guys. But, Brandon Coleman allowed 26, and Ali has allowed 19 pressures. So I think just seeing how the volume of pressures that they've had, I expect that the D-line is probably gonna get some chances. Now, can Duggan, use his feet and make some hay out of that? We'll see. I'm sure that seeing what C.J. Stroud did at the Peach Bowl, it's got to be pretty tempting for him to, when pressure comes, tuck it and run and just see what he can make of it. I'm going to drop this in the chat here.
Go for it.
This link here. Not the chat, in the so you can see those stats. This is from Dog Central. You can see it if you want to click on the reply I just put in the space there. You'll see that stuff.
Yeah. You want to talk about this next question?
Yeah.
As well? Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I missed it. I was doing something.
Oh, yeah. So it's Katie says, similarly, where do you see the biggest position mismatches for both teams? What are your thoughts on that, Josh? If you have any.
I think I had someone much smarter than me at football who is got a legitimate blue check. Who DM'd me, and we were talking back and forth. I don't want to say his name, but he has a show that's on a CBS type show. But he said that he liked the Keely Ringo matchup versus Quentin Johnson. He described it as that the route running and the route tree that Quentin has made good on this year is something that Ringo will have a better chance of defending than he did against maybe the Buttes and the Marvin Harrisons of the world. It's a straight line situation. So that's my source. And I do like the D line versus Georgia and the O line versus TCU that we just talked about. I mean, that's where Georgia has done so well in the last couple of seasons, and I expect it to show up again on Monday night.
Yeah, I agree. I think Keely Ringo, I think he's where he struggled this year has been against guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. A little bit against some of the receivers from Tennessee, even though Georgia didn't give up a lot of points in that game. But guys who have speed, who can make quick cuts, who run, kind of these tight routes that have a lot of movement in them. And Quentin Johnson just isn't that guy. I mean, he's a good physical receiver, but I think I agree with you. I think there's a really good matchup with Keely Ringo and Quentin Johnson. I think I think Keely Ringo is the right kind of corner that you would want playing a guy like that. For me, I think I'm going to mention it, but I think Brock Bowers is he's a mismatch every time he steps on the football field. But I think especially against, this 3-3-5, Michigan wasn't able to be successful, early in the game with using some of their tight ends and running backs. But I think Brock Bowers is going to create some problems for TCU. On the flip side, I think JDJ. We had a question in the YouTube chat about do we think Pop has the speed to spy Duggan, or do we need a faster linebacker? For me, I think JDJ is going to be a big key to this game. I think he is going to present some challenges for Max Duggan, but if we're talking about spying, I think you probably may want to look at a guy like Small London. Might be a guy that I'm going to look for to try to keep Max Duggan in check.
Yeah, I know that we talked earlier in the year about when we spy, which guy would be that spy, and I think Smile London was sort of the one that we all sort of thought might be the spy type. So I expect him to. I wouldn't be surprised to see him, but you're much smarter than me. But JDJ, I mean, again, so we're just loaded at that position. It can be any of those guys, and just because you rotate one of them out doesn't mean that the next guy that's coming in to replace him can't do the same thing or a similar thing, and just going to give a lot of trouble for them to scheme out of those, scheme against those, especially that front seven. Honestly, I think they're going to have to try to go at the secondary. And that's been, brought good results for a lot of yards and points after the game was in hand versus LSU, but it was noted and also clearly Ohio State, did an excellent job exposing what they could in that secondary.
Yeah.
I mean, Odds Bonket here noted that the Michigan tight end did leave the game early. And when you're talking to that type of game, it could have, we don't want to talk about injuries because we wouldn't have anything without injuries, as we all know. But it is an interesting thing that we didn't get to see that matchup. So there was nothing on tape for their starter tight end. He's good too, a good tight end, good freshman tight end that was playing really well at the end of the year.
Yeah. Got another question from the YouTube chat. On a scale of Ladd's arthritic knee to Chubb's Superman repaired tendons, where's your best guess for Darnell's status and snap count? Decoy at minimum. Listen, we saw Darnell this weekend. He's not wearing a boot. He's not wearing necessarily the most supportive shoes. But he's also, I haven't seen Darnell in person walk a lot. But it wasn't quite a normal gait, I would say, this weekend. My personal opinion is I think Darnell Washington is probably somewhere between 60 and 70%. I don't know if he's going to be – I don't know what a snap count would look like for him. But I don't think he's going to be a decoy. I think Georgia's going to put him on the field. I think he's going to have to – they're going to put him on the field and see if he can block. I think he's – that's a key for him. If he can block, I think then they'll keep him in the game playing some of their packages. But that's going to be the big question, right? I mean, his injury, it's just you use your feet when you're blocking so much. And I'm not confident that I think he's going to play. I'm not confident he's going to play a lot. I think he's going to be in key formations, key opportunities for Georgia. And I wouldn't expect him to make a lot of catches tomorrow or be a big part of that kind of downfield game.
Do you think the running is going to be harder on him than the blocking, you think?
Yeah. I think it's just the cutting, right? It's the getting out in space and trying to cut and move. I think if you're in a situation where, you're on the end and you're trying to seal off the end on a block, or you're trying to, down block with a defensive line that's stunning a particular way. I think those movements, even though you use your feet a lot in blocking, I think those movements are a little bit easier, less stressful than trying to run downfield, making some cuts, those types of things that we've seen him, do in the passing game. So I'm not sure how Georgia's going to use them, but just being around these guys this weekend, I think he's going to play because, like I said earlier, it's a national championship game. You're going to have guys that, if you can get on the field and you can make a play or two, you're going to have guys on the field making a play or two. But I'm not super confident he's going to be out there for, 15 or 20 snaps. I would say, I'd maybe put it around 10 or 12 personally.
All right. Well, moving back onto those props, you don't even see him on any of these props because obviously we don't know if he's going to play. Duggan and Bennett passing yards 280.5 for Bennett, Duggan at 233.5. Do you think Bennett gets to 300 yards? And do you think we hold Duggan to that few yards? I think if you're telling me that that's the number that he's going to throw for, I like Georgia in this game even a little better than I think I would before I saw that. That's a low number, I think, for Duggan. I mean, he's got to put up more yards than that to threaten a win.
Yeah, I agree. I think excuse me. It's hard, right? Because Georgia is what's the line? Is it 13 now?
13
somewhere around it. Yeah. So if you think that Georgia is in a position to get close to covering that spread, then you have to think that TCU is going to have to try to throw the ball, right? No one has been able to run on Georgia this year. And my only hesitation is, that's a low number for Max Duggan. And it's also a low number knowing that he's probably going to have to throw the ball 35 times. The question is, how many of those can he complete? So I just don't love that number because I think it might be a situation where he's going to go over that number, but it's going to be by necessity in a situation where Georgia is playing the bend don't break because they have a little bit of a lead kind of situation.
And that volume for Bennett, that 280, that speaks to that sort of balanced volume that I'm kind of expecting. That I think that we're going to see a lot of running back carries. I think we're going to see 4 guys carry the ball. And I kind of that kind of jives with what I think the game plan and what the game script's going to go with. I see. Did he leave? Yeah, we lost CFP numbers. I was hoping he would jump in with some numbers on this stuff. But passing touchdowns, Duggan, both at a touchdown and a half. Props are so dicey, man. The pro guys. The pro guys always say go under.
I think 1.5 though in a college game. That's tough. I think Stetson Bennett is going to throw for over 1.5. I think Max Duggan, personally, I think he is too. I think Georgia. I think I think this game is definitely going to be. I personally think Georgia's going to win the game by a decent margin. I haven't decided if I feel like they're going to cover the spread or not. But I do think Max Duggan and Stetson Bennett are both going to throw for over 1.5 TDs.
Quentin Johnson's the highest number on the board for longest pass reception at 33.5. That's people love to bet props. I think I'm getting my stomach in knots just thinking about it. So, I mean, I'm cheering for the under, but I don't know if that makes it a good bet or not. Bowers at 25.5 too is a tempting. I mean, he seems like he catches every ball between 17 and 25 yards.
100%. I think if you're looking at this list, I think your best bets are Brock Bowers over 25.5 longest reception, or I don't hate the AD Mitchell 22.5 either, to be honest, just because I think this, again, going back to a lot of the way that people attack a 3-3-5 is by running verticals. And I think Georgia will do a little bit of that tomorrow too.
Yeah, too bad they don't have an Arian Smith over under of 75 to show.
That'd be tough, man.
Yeah, you think so? On this page, we got the rushing touchdowns. Basically, everybody's who's going to score the rushing touchdown. I don't. Dejon Edwards under seems pretty good bet there, and you get plus 145 on that. So dang, I kind of like that value.
Yeah, same.
Let me see here. I got one more page. This is a good one. First touchdown score. Let me see what we got in the chat here because this is gonna jump in here with it. Bowers is gonna eat tomorrow. I think we're all hoping and expecting that. First touchdown. It seems so tempting and so easy. I've done this on Monday night, chasing a bad fantasy football weekend on Monday Night Football. If I gave you $100, who are you putting it on?
I'm putting on Brock Bowers. If you gave me $100 on this list, I think Brock Bowers is going to score the first touchdown of the game. I just, for me, honestly, I think the odds for Stetson Bennett are very long, but I think it's going to be Brock Bowers or Stetson Bennett, because I think it's going to be a situation where Georgia drives down the field and then you're in a red zone situation and one of those guys are going to score.
I got a text from Marler. He's listening. I guess he's probably busy doing something else and can't jump into space. But he said that good stat from Uncle Chris, if you know Uncle Chris, the gambler. 6 of the last 7 games, the first touchdown has been Bowers or Kenny McIntosh for Georgia.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at the odds, but yeah, I think it's going to be Bowers just because I think I just think Georgia. That's a good stat from Uncle Chris for sure. But I think Georgia, that red zone game, I think it's going to be heavily predicated on Brock Bowers and AD Mitchell.
Must Chance reading glasses. I love this name. It's a good name. Yes, Arian Smith could have another huge game because, like John just talked about it. Attacking that 3-3-5 with vertical routes. That's in his wheelhouse there. And then we got some TCU love here. Duggan versus Juicy. That's got to be the first TD. I don't want to see Duggan putting TCU up 7-0 or 7-3. But yeah, it is juicy there. I think the one that jumps out at me is Kendall Milton plus 17, almost plus $1,800. That seems like a solid. You can spend $100 worse than that.
Yeah. Josh, do we want to take any questions from the spaces or?
I'm trying.
Okay.
Do we? I don't.
Let's just remind everybody. If you have a question in the space, hit the request button, and we'll try to tap you in. We're taking questions from YouTube at the moment. So
yeah,
cool.
A comp is Levis. I don't think Levis is a good comp for Duggan. I think Duggan. He's 6'2". He's not a small guy. He's not a small quarterback, but I don't really think we've seen anybody. Here we go. We got a request, I think. I hope.
Yeah, I've got them connecting. So,
okay, cool. And you can accept those too, right?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah,
I don't think Josh.
Josh, unmute yourself and we'll chat.
There you go. How's that?
Hey.
So
doing well. How's the baby, Josh?
Which one? Jeez. So one thing we didn't see a lot in Ohio State was outside of the obvious called QB run for the touchdown. We didn't see a lot with Stetson, whether it was designed or undesigned running plays. What do we think about that going into tomorrow night?
Yeah, great question. I think we're going to see. I think we're going to see more of that. I think. I don't think Stetson's going to run a ton, but I do think that there will be design runs for Stetson Bennett tomorrow. And I think the reason I think that is I think Georgia's going to force TCU to make some decisions with that 3-3-5 early on in the game. I don't think that they're going to let them just. Will Muschamp said it. We were listening to him talk in media days this week, and he said facing a 3-3-5 in an offense is kind of like you don't see it a lot. It's kind of like when you face an option offense on the defensive side of the ball. And so one of the things you have to do when you face it, he was talking about you kind of have to do things to just force them to make decisions and try to knock them off of what they're trying to do. And I think run the ball, some design QB run can do that. Yep. All right.
I got another Uncle Chris here. Duggan versus his last 4 ranked teams, 15 rush attempts. Rushing yard, he likes the over 29.5 there, I believe. So
okay,
it's a lot of rushing attempts.
Yeah,
versus the 4 ranked team. So he's saying the 4 ranked teams that Duggan that's a weapon they're going to use to kind of create opportunities and he might be their second best athlete or first best, probably their best athlete on the field, and that's how you get him the ball. Is design some runs.
Yeah.
Please jump in with some more questions in the chat. Trying to hold out till 8:00, but we've enjoyed and appreciate everybody coming on. This is the first one I think I've actually hosted. The YouTube is banging. Thank you guys for jumping in the chat there. I guess we should get to some score predictions eventually.
Hang on,
you got somebody?
We got Graham Coffee joining, so.
Oh, here it comes.
What's up, boys?
What's up, GC?
I am standing in a parking lot somewhere in California waiting for my wife to finish shopping. So figured I would use this opportunity to talk a little dogs. Don't know how long I have, but I've been listening for a little while. But just I thought I'd pop in and give my thoughts on the game, I guess.
Thanks for being
here. Yeah, awesome, Graham. We told everybody both of you guys have been actually working this weekend. I'm sure it's a true labor of love. But what are your thoughts on being there in the midst of all the media activities and stuff?
I mean, definitely. I was at media day yesterday. I mean, I don't know what this means, and I don't know. So I think in sports we sometimes all spend too much time trying to mind read things that we have no ability to do. But Georgia definitely seems comfortable and confident. I mean, some of the guys at media day yesterday looked like they were trying to take a nap, honestly. But
Stacy Searles had his
had his playbook out
and was running plays. So
I saw Ross Dellinger tweeting about that. I mean, I feel like for Georgia, the more I've dug into this game and look back at the Michigan TCU game, and this is usually more like your territory, Josh, with some of the statistical stuff, and also listening to you and Kelly and Parker and that whole podcast you guys did was really good and informative as well. But I think that the only way Georgia loses this game is if they lose it. You know what I mean? I think this is one of those where TCU can win this game, but I think to do it, Georgia kind of has to fiddle around and shoot themselves in the foot. Looking back at that Michigan game, it seemed like, John, you were just talking about that 3-3-5, and it seemed like Michigan didn't know who to block for the first half, went in at halftime, made some adjustments, and then came out and, they finished the game with 10 scoring opportunities versus just 6 for TCU, right? So it's like, I don't know. It's wild to me that all of the things that went TCU's way in that game, pick sixes and 3 drives by Michigan inside the 5 where they came out with a total of 3 points, all the things that kind of aren't repeatable that happened in TCU still only won by 6. It's tough for me to see, Georgia can lose this game, but I think to do it, they've got to they've got to lose it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that TCU is capable of fully taking it from them, you know, on equal footing. If this is a game where, you know, turnover battle is even and there's not a blocked kick or, you know, something kind of crazy or wild, I have a hard time seeing Georgia not winning.
We got KE that just talked about TCU's in the top 5 explosive plays, and UGA is ranked 50th. You know, there's different ways to measure, and you kind of talked about that in one of the interviews, or that we've talked about it too. When you're talking about a team, they typically talk about explosive a little differently than the metrics guys, because they're talking about their team and one team. You know, that's what they're tracking is how many plays do this, as opposed to sort of a number across the board. But Georgia, so it's kind of interesting how you measure that explosiveness. But yes, TCU is 8th in explosiveness, and that also that's the EPA model. So that means, but they have a lower efficiency of offense. They're like a 44% success rate offense. So that means they have a lot of misplays or a lot of plays that aren't great, but the ones that are good are really good.
Right.
So and I think it's just a different way to explain the same thing. But yes, they will. You have to play. You know, you cannot let them sneak up on you. You have to just like any other team. You got to play assignment football and make sure. But you got to be careful, because you know that also tells me that they've got some playmakers. And I mean, Quentin Johnson and Max Duggan is the 2 guys that everyone's talking about.
Right.
And we talked about it earlier in the show, and I think Ringo's got a good matchup there, and I expect us to contain those explosiveness, because Georgia is not before the LSU game. They were very, very good inside the red zone in defense.
And I guess one thing, you know, on the explosives, you kind of referenced this a second ago, Josh, but yeah, I was chatting with Glenn Schumann yesterday, who was awesome, and I wish the media saw him more, because he's a really smart guy and he's got a lot of interesting stuff to say. But he was telling me, or me and a couple other media members, that, you know, Georgia tracks explosives on defense as 12+ yard runs and 15+ yard passes, and that for every, you know, 100 or for every 10 yards that they give up in explosives, they usually correlate that roughly as a point given up. So I tweeted about that, and Dave Bartu, College Football Matrix on Twitter, saw it, and he actually emailed me some data last night and said that he went and looked, and you know, there is some tight correlation there. But the interesting thing that I took out of it was on the season, Georgia has given up 0 rushing touchdowns on an explosive play. Like they've allowed 0 touchdowns on a run of 12+ yards, and they've only allowed 4 passing touchdowns of 15+ yards. So when you think about that, like that's very interesting in the context of this matchup, because I do think TCU is gonna hit some stuff, but like, you know, even with Ohio State and all they were able to do to that Georgia defense last week, the longest play Georgia gave up was 37 yards. So I think for Georgia, you know, we've talked about this in some other matchups this year, but like it feels like to me, when you give up that big play, you got to tackle. And I'm interested to see how they play Duggan, because, you know, there was all this talk about Stroud's legs, and was that unexpected? And I asked Muschamp and Schumann both about that, and they, you know, Schumann said, like, no, we knew he would run. Like, he did it in the Rose Bowl last year. He did it against Oregon. Like, he's done that in big games. And for us, you know, our thing was like, we'd rather make him do that to beat us than let him do what he's comfortable doing. So basically, you know, Georgia wanted to take away the thing he's best at. And if he beats you, you know, playing sideways, then so be it. And he almost did, because he's that good. But I think like that's going to be interesting for us tomorrow to watch. Is I don't know that Georgia, you know, like I don't know that they are going to maybe adjust quite as much with Duggan, or bring the same type of pressure they brought in the second half against Stroud, because like the 2 big touchdown passes that TCU hit against Michigan, both of them were on blitzes that just didn't get home in time, and Duggan just dropped back and was able to hit a crossing route, basically, where a Michigan defender wasn't able to cover a wide receiver on a little flat route, and tons of yards after the catch. So curious to see if Georgia plays a little more like
man on the outside, obviously, but has some of their linebackers kind of in zone and trying to watch some of that flat route stuff.
I don't want to alert anybody or upset anybody or make anybody worry, but UJ Nihilus is listening. So,
Oh God.
Oh God. Oh Lord.
I will invite him. I would invite him to speak, but I'm sure that he would decline as he's a top seeker. I think fewer people know him than the 3-year Letterman.
Yeah. I'm getting motion to get in the car, so I got to run. But great chatting with you guys, and thanks for having me on.
Graham, thank you, buddy. Enjoy the night. Enjoy the game. We'll talk some more.
Absolutely. Go Dogs.
Yeah, I think we can. I think we can run predictions and wind it down, Josh. Unless we have any other questions.
No, I think so. I think we're coming in an hour, and wrap it up. And so certainly, if you guys got some predictions you want to jump in, either on the Twitter space or in the don't do that to me. Stop that.
Come on, Josh.
No. So okay. So you want to kick it off?
Sure. Yeah. I think so I've thought about this a lot. I think Georgia's coming in, pretty banged up especially on the defense side of the ball. Some of the key playmakers on the offense side of the ball are also a little banged up. I think that Georgia is going to try. The game plan is going to try to race out to a lead and then try to shut it down a little bit more. So I think this is going to go under I think it's 63 at the moment. But I think this is going to be a 38-20 kind of game with Georgia winning. So I think Georgia's going to win what looks pretty, like a pretty comfortable game. But I think it's definitely going to feel a little bit of a vintage. Come out, score some points, slow things down in the third quarter, run the ball a lot, and hang on to win by a good margin.
All right. Do we get a request? I hear the blitz, and I don't know if he's requesting. Okay, 38-20. I think that Georgia is going to be super efficient on offense. I think they're going to get a lot of snaps. I expect 60-plus snaps, a lot of the balanced run game, and I can see a 32-28 run pass split, maybe even more on the run, and limit. And like I talked about, the efficiency is kind of on the lower side for TCU, and I think that's going to give us a couple more possessions too and limit their chances. So I'm thinking 34-10 is my prediction there, and I think they're going to score just a field goal in the second half. I think it's going to be like a 17-7 at half, and Georgia kind of runs it down their throat in the second half. Type that in here. Did I say 34-10? That was Josh under 63. 34-10. It makes it not. I've never been close on my score predictions, so I would take the over if I were you guys. 34-10. 44-24 from Must Chance Reading Glasses. Best name in the chat tonight. Let's see that show. That's all right. Anybody else want to ask John a question or want to make a score prediction? And otherwise, we will wrap this up and get ready for.
We do have one request.
We'll be pretty excited.
My AirPods
John,
are
you got
about
anything else you want?
so if I
get out here before we go?
disconnect, we do have Cheeto, who is from
we do
Dogs Off the Leash
have one
podcast,
request.
who's in this space that might have
my AirPods are about to die, and so
Okay.
if I disconnect, we do have Cheeto, who is from Dogs Off the Leash podcast, who's in this space that might have a thought or two.
All right. Let's see. Add a speaker. Cheeto, my man. Unmute. Bring it. I know you got something.
Yeah, real quick.
That you want to share.
Real quick. I just wanted to give a score prediction. I'm feeling like this is going to be a 38-27 type of vibe. And counterintuitive to the last guy that spoke, I think what Georgia's going to try to come out and do especially if Washington is healthy. I think we established a ground game very early, and then when TCU tries to bring in an extra defender down in the box, that we start to hit them with the play action later in the game and lean on them that way. So that's kind of how I'm seeing the game going. And other than that, go Dogs, guys.
Thank you for jumping in there. Thanks,
For sure.
Tito. I'm answering one of these in the chat here, asking about Cart. Oh, John had to bail. His AirPods died. He's been a busy man. I will say this: we got a couple people asking about it if Jalen Carter was sick. I don't think we're ever going to know that. We've seen and heard and read that he was not 100%, and it was easy to see that how few snaps he played. But I don't think you're going to get anybody admitting that. So I don't think we're ever going to know that. And I do expect a big game from Jalen just because I think it's a great matchup for the offensive line that TCU is bringing to the game and what Georgia can do on the D line and off the edge there. Thank you, guys. If anybody's shut this down here and jump in, I appreciate you guys joining us. If you are not a Dog Central subscriber, please consider it. It's less than a coffee a month, and we bring stats analysis and we have a great forum of people that jump in and bring all kinds of stuff. And it's a very smart and very friendly and very it's a different type of community. Also, we do this I call it a dual stream where we are online on the YouTube and also